Hey FFR listeners, did you know that if you join our Patreon community, you can get nifty perks like early access, exclusive weekly bonus segments, access to our friendly Discord, and more? That's right, you can get cool stuff and help us keep doing FFR at the same time. What are you waiting for? Go to patreon.com/femfreak.
I immediately started asking the question I ask whenever I see like a supervillain lair, because that's what it's going to turn out to be, which is, who built this? Who cleans it? Right?
No one. No one cleans it, which is bullshit. Because who stocks their fridge?
Exactly.
They sure don't.
Thank you.
God. Welcome to Feminist Frequency Radio. This is the show that asks you to be critical of the media you love. I'm Anita Sarkeesian, and I'm joined today by two women from the era that says stupid shit and gets stuff wrong. Carolyn Pettit.
You ain't woke, you're comatose.
Ebony Adams.
What's up?
Would you like to say?
No, I can't top that,
good.
so...
All right, this week we'll be talking about the new Hulu series Devs from Alex Garland, the filmmaker behind Ex Machina and Annihilation. Hello, friends.
Everyone holding up okay, considering that we lost that hour of sleep last night?
I'm so happy. Nope. Do you want to know why I'm so happy?
Why? Because you want everyone to suffer like you do?
Wow.
That's part of it. That's part of it because you don't sleep well.
True. But it is, I didn't realize how delightful it is when I'm jet lagged with a particular type of jet lag. And then I lose an hour, which means that I'm going to adjust faster. Because I've been falling asleep at like fucking 9.
That's
and so,
legit.
yeah. So I was like, oh, I'm not awake at 5 in the morning. So selfishly, this timing worked out well for me, but it sucks for everyone else. But you know what? Y'all can suck it because I am here for the sunlight.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
For real.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Note to self and everyone else, we can suck it. That combined with the opening, two women from the era that says stupid shit and get stuff wrong. Like, I just know someone's going to cut out the women from the era and it'll just be two women who say stupid shit and get stuff wrong. Oh, boy.
Man, speaking of getting stuff wrong, I've been, the day before we recorded this was International Women's Day, and I saw some dumbass shit on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
People don't understand how to do this at all.
Are you talking about multinational oil company Shell adding an apostrophe between the E and the first L?
I'm not.
Shell.
Wow.
It's so embarrassing.
No,
like that.
Yes.
Oh, I missed that one.
I think we're all living in an edition of The Onion right now. Like, that's just our lives.
Yeah. No, I was referring to, I didn't even look to see who this was. I set their username on the post that had been shared was like police something. So it might be a police department where for International Women's Day this year, they had women award and nominate men who had helped them in their careers.
Oh, God.
Are you what?
I died. No, I'm serious. Like, that's the shit where people, like, they think that is actually, that's out, like, that's right. They think that that's the way to do this.
I'm in a state of shock.
Ebony legitimately is just
like
I cannot contain herself.
I can't process this. Okay.
Anyways, so don't do things like that.
Yeah.
Do nothing. Like, literally, if you don't know how to do the thing that is actually good for women or helpful, just do nothing.
You know,
which is better than what you're doing.
Right. Although I have to say, and maybe I just wasn't online enough yesterday, but I did not see nearly the amount of International Women's Day. How come there's no International Men's Day? You know, like that kind of internet bullshittery that comes around anytime it's like Black History Month or, you know, Indigenous Peoples Month or whatever. So I'm sure it was there, but I just happened to miss it, or it just got drowned out amongst all the other shit.
That's so nice for you.
It was nice.
Yeah.
You know, I'm grateful.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Let's talk about a TV show that was made.
Mm-hmm.
As a filmmaker, Alex Garland has a history of making science fiction films that are ominous and psychologically complex. Films like Ex Machina and Annihilation. Now he's created a limited series called Devs, which bears many of his signature traits. Like the zone known as the Shimmer from Annihilation, the campus for Bay Area tech company Amaya on Devs is a place practically overgrown with natural beauty, but also a place of mystery and secrecy. Like Oscar Isaac's tech whiz in Ex Machina, Amaya's CEO Forrest, played by Nick Offerman, just might be taking technology a little too far. At the center of Devs is Lily, played by Sonoya Mizuno, an InfoSec employee at Amaya whose life is upended when her boyfriend Sergey mysteriously disappears just after being invited by Forrest to work on Devs, the super secret Amaya project that is Forrest's obsession. As she begins her investigation, everything Lily thought she knew starts to fall apart as Lily discovers that Sergey had his share of secrets too.
So, in some ways, talking about Devs at this point, given that only 2 of the episodes have been released, is, maybe a little bit like talking about Annihilation after only watching the first half hour. Like, there's so much about it that is still shrouded in mystery. But I think there are, nonetheless, a lot of interesting things already that we can sort of glean and talk about.
Mean interesting? Like, does that mean the same thing to you as it does to me?
Oh my God! Here we go. Here we go, Kara.
I don't know. But so I mean, there's a lot that I thought was really interesting about this. So let me start.
I'm sorry.
A little bit about the casting.
Carolyn, the most
Yes,
interesting thing is the fucking baby head statue. Because
sure.
that shit was
super interesting. Definitely.
Super interesting. Yep.
Not where I was going to start, but we can definitely talk about that. Like, I guess one thing I want to start by talking about is the casting, in the sense that, like, I feel like, maybe I'm giving it too much credit, but that maybe there's some thoughtfulness to the casting along racial lines. And so what I mean is, like, you have Nick Offerman and Allison Pill, 2 white actors in these prominent roles at the head of Amaya, right? Nick Offerman as Forrest, the CEO, and Allison Pill as Katie, his sort of enigmatic, like, right-hand woman who may, in fact, be smarter and, like, be pulling the strings. Like, we don't even fully yet know what that power dynamic is and, like, what that relationship really entirely is. But it's interesting to me that, like, to me, it makes sense that they're white because in Bay Area tech, power and fame and prestige and respect and all of this is still consolidated very much among white people. But at Amaya, like so many of the rank and file people who do the work off of which Forrest and Katie obviously benefit and profit are people of color. And, and the show, again, it centers Lily, or at least it seems to be centering Lily, and, other people of color in important roles, Jin Ha as her ex, Jamie, and stuff like that. So I don't know. I just thought, like, well, here's a case where, like, it maybe makes sense, that these particular characters are white characters because we're acknowledging something about the distribution of power in this sphere.
What's so interesting about what you just said, Carol, is that I found this show really interesting. To use Anita's term.
Oh, my term. I was the one who used it first, but
well, I think whether I meant the same thing. Who wanted to, offer, some some pushback on that, but whatever. So I found it really interesting, but also so incredibly frustrating because while I do acknowledge what you're saying about the racial dynamics of the show, and I do think that that there is something very smart going on there. Like there's a way in which the show is very self-aware. And being very deliberate about the kind of tech world that it presents. And you're also right that, only 2 episodes in, we don't quite know how things are going to resolve and how certain things are going to be tied up and some things will be left, kind of unwoven into the tapestry. But one thing that I found incredibly frustrating is the way that this show, like in so many other shows, and I think this is pertinent, does not tackle any kind of class implication in any sustained way, in a way that, like, I kept asking a question. So when you find out where the devs, like the top secret devs project is located on the Amaya campus, I immediately started asking the question that I ask whenever I see like a supervillain lair, because that's what it's going to turn out to be, which is who built this? Who cleans it? right?
No one cleans it, which is bullshit. Because who stocks their fridge? They sure don't.
Thank you.
God.
And I'm thinking like, okay, so
he puked in that toilet was probably disgusting. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So like, and I know that sometimes when you point out little details like this, people are like, okay, you're choosing to focus on like sort of banal trivialities, you know, as a way of dismissing kind of the larger picture. But I think this is part of the larger picture. And so in the same way that like, you know, tech bros in Silicon Valley now refuse to acknowledge that they live in a city in which there are, you know, there's a broad spectrum of economic need and economic reality. They don't want to see the homeless. They don't want to see poor people. This show doesn't want to wrestle with the fact that there is a service industry. You know, it is okay to show brown people, Asian people, etc., as long as they are solidly middle class and above, and they occupy the professional class.
I'll push back on that slightly, and I'm not defending the show, but I think that there's an inherent like, we have so much goddamn money that we can build this giant thing. So the labor is erased, but it is also like, if you dig one level deeper, you're like, obviously this is being built by people who are, you know, service industry. Right, but you're saying, yeah, you're right, totally. But one of the main characters or one of the supporting characters is going to be the homeless guy that lives in front of Lily's apartment. Yeah. He was in both episodes. He like is talking a lot. He's going to be a part of it. And that I think related to what Carolyn's saying and what you're saying is interesting because he's like a big white dude. That is now representing the homeless population of...
And I guess like that matters, absolutely. But I'm talking about that invisible labor class, right? And so I think there's a way in which our very technophilia, which manifests itself in shows like Devs and our Star Trek, which we'll be talking about in the next podcast, demands...
different podcast, not...
Well, the next podcast I record. But it sort of demands that we hand wave away certain kinds of labor because it's ugly, right? And so, and the rationale or the excuse is, oh, we've progressed so far, we no longer need humans to perform certain kinds of roles because there's something repulsive to us about someone who has to like make our food if it's not like a certain kind of artisanal gourmet food, someone who has to clean our toilets, someone who has to sweep our streets, someone who has to take the recycling out. And I just think that's really interesting. And so I'm excited and hopeful that the show, which I think is doing some very smart things, will kind of acknowledge that is there. But I think our class blindness, willful class blindness, especially in our media, is so pervasive. I have doubts that will ever come to pass on screen.
Absolutely. And I'm very frustrated by that one homeless character that we get.
Yeah, same.
Because of... I mean, he says, like, in that second episode, you know, they kind of turn his position, you know, into a joke, right? Like he negotiates with Jamie to get money to like never speak to him again, and then you know he speaks to Jamie again, and then he's like, that's exactly the lack of professionalism that, you know, whatever resulted in you living a life on the streets or whatever. It's like, no, like, I mean, I know you're like joking or whatever, but fuck that. Like, fuck that. Like, it's not like people are on the streets because they like lack professionalism or what. Like, I hate, I mean, but that is a thing that so many people honestly believe, that they don't see the systemic causes. They don't see any of that shit. They honestly believe that it's like a choice or a character flaw or, you know, something like that people fucking deserve to you know, to be on the street or whatever. And I mean, to even like treat it in that way glibly, like, you know, in passing, it really bothered me.
Yeah, and I mean, I suspect that, you know, this homeless dude, and did we get his name? Did I forget his name?
I don't know.
But he's going to wind up being a more integral.
Yes.
You know, right? So it's maybe not, but it's like, I would not be surprised if it turns out that this was all part of an elaborate conspiracy and he wasn't actually homeless. This was, right? And it's like, no.
I was thinking that as I brought it up. I
want to see some service workers. I want to see. So when Forrest says to Sergey, like, we don't bring anything in and we don't take anything out, no laptops, no nothing. And I'm like, okay, so who's cooking the food that these people eat? There's the mechanics of it matter.
There's a scene where Katie goes and grabs water out of a fridge. Who put that there?
Yeah.
It's not like these extremely talented programmers are cleaning the toilets.
Yeah.
I was like, shut the fuck up. Okay. I want to pull back a little bit.
Pull back.
This show was not good. And let me tell you why. So here's the thing is the first episode, I was like, I always give first episodes a lot of leniency. Pilots are tough and they're not great and whatever. And I love Nick Offerman. I had such intense, complicated feelings about seeing San Francisco. Like as someone who lived there for a long time and like left for this reason, it was, it was these beautiful shots of San Francisco being gorgeous. And then also the homeless man sleeping at the doorstep, which I experienced several times living there. Yeah. The bus and then going down to the campus, all of that stuff was just, I was like, it felt personally like really complicated because I feel like I have such a personal relationship to all of what that stands for. So there's some interesting stuff there. It's a interesting conspiracy to be like these big tech companies have so much fucking money that they can do whatever they want. And of course there's this secret thing. Like I was kind of like, okay, fine. But like at the end of the day, especially after watching both episodes and this season on, because this season on is really what made me be like, this is going to be dumb as balls.
Dumb as balls. Sorry. Wow, America. Wow,
that
world.
Was unnecessary. Sorry, I take that back. Anyways, okay. So I preface all of that because I cannot stand the women in refrigerator bullshit. I cannot stand the villain trope of the like deeply personal, I was hurt by a tragedy that happened in my life and therefore I'm going to destroy the world kind of thing. And that is 100% what this story is predicated on. It is the head of a tech company who lost his daughter, who lives in the same house and drives a fucking Subaru and made a company named after her with a giant statue of her.
Which
and literally
made me laugh every time I saw it.
It was hilarious. And the tech that is being built is so he can watch his daughter blow bubbles. Like, well,
that's not the end point. I mean, the intention behind building a machine that proves that there is no free will is so that he can feel justified and that he could not have controlled the death of his daughter. That is what they are setting up in this narrative. I think that there's going to be a lot more to it than that. I think that so the whole thing about Sergey, right? Like bringing Sergey into devs, like so they knew exactly what was going to happen because that's what devs does, right? It reveals it shows that there's that everything is deterministic, et cetera, and we know what people are going to do. And he knew that Sergey, as a Russian spy, was going to take pictures of the code with his James Bond wristwatch and all of that. And so they got no benefit out of Sergey. Like that could only be part of a longer game, a bigger game to involve Lily in some way. Like to know that Lily was going to start an investigation. So there obviously is some benefit to Forrest and to Amaya to having triggered, Sergey's death and to like whatever but of course something is going to happen that proves that free will actually does exist and their deterministic thing like can't predict everything and
this is the thing is he's building a machine that says there's no free will and everything is determined and so what you're saying based on the fact that this is what this machine is supposed to be doing is that like it doesn't it's not that they're pulling people in or that the Sergey thing didn't matter. It just validates their theory of like things will happen and you can't control them. And Sergey was going to do this and we were going to kill him. And then we were going to sit next to some fucking golden pillars and feel bad about murder. Like, and so to me, it's like, well, there's no point in the show if everything is going to happen how it happens. So something has to happen where Lily disrupts their system. Seems so, it's so, I don't know. It does not look interesting to me. Like
I think all your criticisms are totally valid, but I also believe that a work of fiction can use familiar, even troubling or problematic building blocks, and still end up with an interesting result. I mean, Into the Spider-Verse, right? Kingpin in that, all he cared about was like going to another multiverse or whatever to get his like wife and daughter back.
I loved that movie, and I hated that piece of it. Like, I'm just tired saying, like, of this trope.
Of course, and that's fair, but I also don't think it's the entire. It may, like, if that's all devs ends up being, then fair, like, absolutely. But we don't know that that's all that devs is going to actually end up being. It could just be the building blocks, which, yes, lousy building blocks maybe to choose to start with, but nonetheless, like, it's possible that I think that something fascinating or good or worthwhile or, could yet come out of some of what it's doing.
Well, I hope that they improve their technology so we're not looking at fucking 1990s Winamp
simulated. I mean, sometimes, like this is real. I'm gonna keep it 100. I will keep watching this show because I am interested in how things resolve, but also, like, I am delighted by some of the absurdity. Like, I did legit laugh every time I saw that giant kid statue.
It's so funny.
Right. And I also laughed that after the huge buildup of Sergey getting to go to devs, this incredibly top secret, super secret project, and then ultimately it's like this, like, BuzzFeed desks, like, everyone. I mean, I'm not saying that it doesn't make sense, total transparency, we're a team, whatever. But it killed me that I would have been like, this is it. This is what I had to go through all that shit for. Can we talk a little bit about Zach Grenier, who plays the head of security? We don't even need to say anything. It's just, this is the moment in every podcast where I shout out a character actor that I just happen to love, and I love Zach Grenier. Like, was very happy to see him.
My happy character actor in this is Stephen McKinley Henderson, who plays Stuart, the old coder working on devs.
Yep.
And I did want to touch briefly on that conversation they have that I alluded to in the intro text about the era. So Stuart, this older dev, gets into a bit of an argument with a much younger dev because the younger dev says, you're from the era that says.
Sorry, Carol. He was referring to the Winamp visualization as baby. That's
baby, right. Yes, right. So don't call it baby, he's from the era that gets stuff wrong and says stupid shit. And, like, I just thought that was such an interesting, moment, because I do think that there is at times a certain arrogance among younger people who think that, the older people have all this problematic stuff, but they don't see that with almost absolute certainty, like, they will one day be in that role, and the younger generations that come after them will have all these ideas and things that reveal that so many of our assumptions or their assumptions are fucked up and wrong and limiting and problematic, and will then have to, like, adjust their thinking or be the olds who just don't get it. And, like, I just think that arrogance is a thing that actually exists and is troubling, right? Like we all have to be open to, like, the awareness that we hold a lot of bad assumptions and things. There are things we just don't see, but maybe the next generation will see them, and so it goes, right? I mean, I don't know. Anyway, I just thought it was an interesting moment.
And I mean, it's interesting that the person who plays that character, the older character, is a Black man, right? Like, it's interesting when just the racial implications of this show, and the ways that it shows that it can be very thoughtful, which is not to say unproblematic at all, but it can be very deliberate rather than thoughtful, about things. I also, just to go back to Zach Grenier for a second, I was really wondering about, so the scene in which Sergey is going through, like, his in-person security screening, and Kenton says, like, so your girlfriend is Chinese, and the implication being this might be a problem, and you're Russian. And of course, Sergey pushes back and says, well, she's third generation, she's American, but you're not. And then it turns out, and you think like, oh, this guy's being very xenophobic, and racist. But then it turns out Sergei actually was up to something. And I was like, so the message here is that profiling works, right? And the show does play with it a bit, but I hate when, shows try to like use a character who is meant to be in opposition to our protagonist or one of our protagonists to say something regressive. But then the show turns around and supports that message because ultimately, the dude would be right to be suspicious of this Russian dude. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? Again, we don't know what's happening. We don't know how this is going to play out. Maybe Sergei was using his James Bond watch for the forces of true and right and whatever. But I did think it was interesting given the conversation that happens later as Forrest is walking Sergei to devs, like the big cube. And Forrest is asking Sergei to try and guess what the project is. And one of the things that Sergei guesses is something having to do with national security. And Forrest, with the entirely accurate hubris of like the global colossus tech giant that he is, says such things don't concern me, And I just thought, of course they don't, because when you achieve a certain level of power and money, you don't have to be concerned with things like this. Or you think that you're not concerned with notions of identity and, puny considerations like national boundaries, but you just, in fact, try and uphold other systems. It is not that you are so far beyond or so evolved from these kinds of considerations. You have simply picked up, and are obsessing over different ones. And I just, oh God, but the whole kooky white tech genius trope, I'm so done. I'm so done. When he is eating salad with his fingers in that first meeting, it was hilarious, but I was also like, I would have gotten up and walked the fuck out.
I am here for narratives that demonize megalomaniac tech geniuses,
for real.
Right? Like, I'm okay with the fact that so far he's not a good person. But Nick Offerman is really good. Like, I think that he is, I like him as an actor a lot, and I think he's playing this role really interestingly. But I'm wondering how they're going to like work to humanize him and stuff. And then I'm going to take all of what I just said back. I struggle with the show because like there's some things that are smart and like, kind of what you're talking about. Like there's moments that you're like, oh, interesting. Oh, what are you doing here? And then other moments where I'm like, that was the worst dialogue, or like that was unnecessary exposition, or like the tone is shifting so hard that it like I'm laughing, but I'm like, I think that the way that the music is playing out in a particular scene is so funny, even though it's supposed to be serious, I think, but it's also funny. Like I feel like it doesn't quite get itself yet in terms of what it's trying to come across. And that I'm giving a bit of a benefit of the doubt here because Alex Garland's pedigree is pretty good, right? Like comes from 28 Days Later, Ex Machina, Annihilation. Like I have issues with all of them, but overall they're very well done, right? Especially like Ex Machina, we could talk about the politics of that, but the film itself is very well done. And the pacing, the tone, Annihilation, like I was kind of half and half on it, but overall. And so I feel like that he's having a hard time translating from film to television, which is a different style of storytelling. And I think that this is on FX. And like, there are probably a lot of executive notes that are coming in that are really like interfering with like this grander vision potentially. So I'm trying to give it some benefit of the doubt because the things that I'm seeing right now feel like the things that I'm struggling with feel a little amateur to me in terms of what I expect from this filmmaker in the past, or what I've seen in the past.
Yeah, I don't know what to think. One thing I do want to bring up, and I will try and find the link. So I read a review of the first couple of episodes that was published in The Guardian a few days ago, and I tweeted about it because one of the things that the reviewer said whilst talking about the performances in the show was that he did not enjoy Sonoya Mizuno's performance, essentially because she was non-expressive. He wasn't able to read her. He was essentially calling her an inscrutable Asian. And I just thought, you can't possibly not know how this reads. You know, you reviewer for The Guardian can't possibly have never heard why this particular trope is problematic. But I think it points to the ways in which certain conversations we think everyone has had and everyone has, acknowledged, okay, that's a fucked up thing to say. And also you really need to, question what you mean when you say like Asians are inscrutable and you can't read them. But clearly that shit's still happening. And I couldn't believe it.
And here's the thing is I feel like her performance, I wanted more from it. So, and not in that way. I think that the like, kind of internalized mode that she was operating in and the sort of quietness of her was really great. I think that they gave her terrible fucking dialogue.
Yeah.
And that she's just not a skilled enough actor yet in her career to be able to handle horrible dialogue, which most actors can't.
Yeah.
So it was I really want to root for her and I really want to like her. And I'm like, but I'm so pulled out every time you're on screen. Same with like the dialogue between her and Jamie and Jamie, right?
Yeah.
And that relationship. Like I wanted there to be something more, but like it was really just the dialogue between them was so bad that like it felt like different types of, there's so many different levels of acting skill in this show and different levels of like dialogue written for these characters in ways that were really jarring for me going in and out of the different scenes.
Yeah, but I mean, but that's a different critique, right?
Oh, totally.
Saying,
Sorry.
But you get it that you can say like, boy, Sonoya Mizuno had not enough to work with or way too much to work with. And unfortunately, we don't think that she was able to, do whatever needed to be done to kind of elevate whatever, right? Versus saying like, I just can't read her. I can't, there's something about this actor of this background in particular. I'm just having a hard time scruting her. Completely, what's the word? Inscrutable. So yeah.
No, totally. Good call out. We'll link that article if you'd like to see racist analysis.
Yeah, and I think the writer would probably be completely gobsmacked by someone pointing out like, hey, this is a real fucked up trope you're engaging in right now. I think it probably passed them by entirely. Whatever. Can we also talk about how Alison Pill's agent is working overtime? That woman is like getting all the work right now on all the science shows. Good for her. Yeah.
But also, can we talk about Alison Pill as Sheryl Sandberg?
Please do. Bring it on down.
I don't even have anything more to say. I just was like, oh, she's Sheryl Sandberg. That's what this character is. Cool. Yeah. Cool. I don't, like I'm so here for the dystopian narratives of evil tech companies. And I just, didn't do it for me. And as they were walking to the Borg cube, I was watching this with a friend and we were like, what is it? What could it be? What is it? What it like before we get there? What do you think it could be? First of all, he called it exactly. And I was like, wow, that was impressive to me. Like free will, the whole thing. And I kept being like, I don't know. Like, I feel like it's something about like unlimited power. And then it's going to be like this analogy of like, like actual like privileged power versus like, actually creating power or whatever. So in some ways that is what this is, right? Like being able to foresee the future is an incredibly powerful thing. And then can you tweak it or adjust it or change it would be the next logical thought process in this. But I don't know. It's just not landing. It's so not landing. And I might keep watching it, but right now I don't. I will keep watching it when I run out of other things to watch. When
you run out of CW shows. I'm going to keep watching it because I think that we're going to return to the idea of the multiverse in a big way. And that, there's going to be a multiverse version of Sergei that comes back. And there's going to be a chance for Forrest to go rescue his daughter and just all kinds of other dumb stuff. But I really love when a show lets an actor play a slightly different version of another character. That's why I was a big fan of Orphan Black. I just love it. I love it. So I'm here for that and that specifically.
I do want to call out that the fight scene between the Russian spy and the handler and the security guy was a very realistic looking fight. And that scene bothered me because it was another example of how they're using music to change the tone. Like it almost felt comical until it didn't. But then I was watching it and I was like, oh, this is like real fighting, which I appreciate because we have so much like sensationalized,
like really highly choreographed. Yeah.
Where this looked like two dudes literally like.
It looked dirty. It looked awkward. Yeah.
Like fighting actually is.
Yeah.
I don't understand the logistics of how he actually killed him because, spoilers, like, that was gross and disgusting, but also how would you get enough leverage to pull that hard? And necks don't snap that easily. Oh, sorry. I like that confused me in a scene that felt otherwise.
Did we just learn that Anita secretly is an operative who has snapped many
I think
necks
she just
in
blew her
time?
cover.
But did nobody else think, hit me up on Patreon if you thought that was
Jesus. You don't want that conversation. I thought you were going to say, where did he get that plastic bag? You know, like
oh, no, not Sergey when he was killed. No, not that fight. The fight in the parking garage. Because he snaps his neck on a tire, but he's ahead of him. I'm sorry, it was disgusting.
Thanks for reminding me.
I just was like, I don't know how this is physically possible in the way that they're positioned in this moment. It's so not important.
You know what, people, please don't hit us up on Patreon with that. Don't link us to anything. Don't talk about it in a tremendously detailed way.
Just say, yes, I agree with Anita, or no, I don't.
Yeah, hide it behind spoiler tags or some shit. I don't want to see that.
All right. Any other thoughts? I made a note about the when Stuart and the kid in front of the Winamp screen were talking, that the kid seems to be genderqueer a little bit, which I appreciated. The character's name is Lyndon. They haven't been gendered yet on the show. And I think I only know their name because I was watching it with subtitles on. I don't think it was ever said. So that, I liked that.
Can someone please pay Carolyn $500 to write a piece comparing and contrasting in an 8th grade style? Silicon Valley, Devs, and Halt and Catch Fire. Please. Thank you very much. Okay.
Sure. All right.
I mean, I'm all for paying Carolyn to write things. I feel
Me
like that
too.
would be a very... Everyone, pay Carolyn to write things.
Yeah, somebody hit her up. Someone commissioned her to write this thing. I think there's probably a lot of different things to talk about, like the presentation of like technology as a panacea, you know, versus societal ill, you know, the myth of like the male genius versus the female genius.
This hurts me a little bit because Halt and Catch Fire is so fucking good that I am feeling a little blasphemed by the fact that you compared these two things.
I said compare and contrast in an 8th grade English essay style. Anyway, someone commissioned Carol to write it. She's very smart.
All right. Let's be done with this now.
Okay.
Well, sure. Just as they don't observe weekends, neither do we apparently.
Listen.
Well, I want to say but since you mentioned that, real quick, I want to say like I did like that bit when they go into Devs, like one of the first things Forrest says to Sergey, like, we don't acknowledge weekends. You can work nights, you know, many do, etc. And it's like these statements of freedom, like you can work on. I was so
confused.
But what I liked about it is like it's that freedom that it sounds like freedom, but it's probably actually like tyrannical, like it, and because like there was something to me about that seems insightful about how Bay Area tech culture actually works, like the sense of, oh, you don't need unions because we're this like free fun company where you can like work how you want or whatever, but like how that kind of like sheen of freedom can actually be very controlling and exploitative. Like
it reminds me of conversations that I had recently because whatever, I was at a game studio and we're talking about how to make gaming better for women, and you know, crunch comes up and all this stuff. And so anyways, unlimited vacation policy is something that a lot of tech companies are taking on. So it's not just 2 weeks. It's like you can have as much time as you want. And what happens is exactly what you're talking about, Carol, where nobody takes time off at all.
Yeah.
Because it feels like you are abusing the system, or that if you're not working 24/7 and crunching and doing, you know, being there all the time, then you're not a good employee. And so if you took 3 weeks, holy shit, you're right. You know, you're
not
horrible.
as dedicated. Yeah. You know.
But the point of unlimited vacation policy is that there is freedom to take the breaks that you need to take as you need them, to be the best that you can be, and But like, that's the reality, is that if management doesn't really encourage and support communities, support a culture that encourages rest and relaxation and all of that, it's not going to happen. And then you have people who never take time off. So, stuff. Yeah, like this applied to you two too, because we had unlimited vacation, and neither of you ever took it. Barely. I feel like I remember sometimes I had to, when we were working too hard, I remember being like, do not work on Friday.
Yeah. Well, part of the issue is, and this is related, is that I worked from home. I worked remotely a large part of the time. And you do fall into that trap where you feel as if I was working in an office, it would be 9 to 6 and I would leave and I would be fine with that. But I don't want my boss to think I'm not dedicated or that, I'm taking advantage. So I'm going to answer these emails at 10 p.m. just, because I can, because I've been on my laptop all day. It's always around.
I'm that kind of boss.
No, that's the thing, is that capitalism becomes most effective when you internalize those strictures, right? So you never said to me like, hey, it'd kind of be nice if you were reachable at all hours of the fucking day. In fact, you would say the opposite, but internally I'd be like, oh, for sure. Well, let me just answer these 3 emails.
I think it's also different too, where giant tech companies, there's more, what's the word? Duplication of something. You know what I mean? Like, we were so small. Yes, redundancy. Thank you. We were so small that it did feel like, okay, we have to plan for one of us not being around or whatever. I don't know why we're talking about this, but I think that Carolyn, your point about how they talk about that and the is so related to the actual culture of how they talk about work hours is so related to the actual culture of how these companies operate.
Yeah, and it's so nefarious too, right? Because under the guise of making things easier for you to work for them, they'll be like, hey, you decide you're going to work nights for us? Great. So we know that you could spend more time working if you didn't have to leave to go to the gym, because we know that you like going to the gym, right? So we'll have an on-campus gym. And also we've got an on-campus smoothie bar and whatever. And soon you're spending more and more time. And you think, well, God, my company has been so great as to build this gym for us. I'm going to do more for them. So maybe I won't actually even use that gym. But suddenly it becomes your whole life, your whole identity, and you are subsumed into like the corporate body in a very real way. And it's just fucking gross.
Yeah, it is super gross. All right, y'all. We'll be right back with our weekly freakouts.
Hey friends, Carolyn here. If you enjoy listening in on our conversations each week about what's happening in the world of media and pop culture and how that impacts our larger culture, please head on over to patreon.com/femfreak and help us keep bringing FFR to you.
What's your freak out?
Now it's time to talk about what's been thrilling us, moving us, upsetting us, or infuriating us this past week. Ebony, you got something lined up for us.
I do. So I have been rereading the ones that I've already read and discovering anew the ones that I hadn't read. A favorite series from Baby Ebony's childhood, the Earthsea series by Ursula K. Le Guin. Obviously, iconic science fiction author of classics like The Left Hand of Darkness and The Dispossessed, but also the Earthsea series. The, I believe, first 2 or 3 of which were made into just an ass backward, fucked up, completely bullshit Sci-Fi Channel adaptation, and which, unsurprisingly, because people are trash, the people of color in the book, like, they are explicitly brown people, were somehow white in this adaptation. Like,
no.
Yo.
Why?
And my girl Ursula, plus all, the real fans were like, this is fucked up. That adaptation went absolutely nowhere because we were like, we don't want it. Anyways, it has been a revelation to be reminded what really thoughtful science fiction can be like. Particularly science fiction that takes it as a matter of course, or rather, I should say, I'm saying science fiction, but I really mean fantasy in the sense, because the Earthsea series is set in a pre-industrial land archipelago in which magic is real. There are no like huge, large cities. As I say, it's pre-industrial, whatever. But rather than the kind of Tolkien-esque, kind of proto-European version of it, as I say, everyone is brown. brown, black, you know? It's fantastic. And it's just as a matter of course. It is not, Robin Hood's Merry Band with like Morgan Freeman as, like one lone, POC, just holding things down. Everyone is brown. It's gloriously brown. Someone cross-stitched that for me. Everyone is brown. It's phenomenal. So please check out the series if you are at all inclined. I know I'm not giving the best recommendation here, but it really is. Ursula K. Le Guin was just a phenomenal writer. First book is The Wizard of Earthsea. So check it out.
Sweet.
That's what I'm freaking out about.
Carolyn, what are you freaking out about?
So I just got a little fun thing this week. So I listened, there's a podcast called Reply All, which I've never listened to before. But this week, like the latest episode, it got shared a lot on my Twitter timeline. People were like, wow, this episode is like really interesting, fascinating, really great. And I listened to it, and it is a really fun and fascinating episode. So episode 158 of Reply All is called The Case of the Missing Hit. And what this episode is about is this man contacts one of the hosts of the show, Reply All, and is like, and basically this guy's dilemma is that he remembers a song from the 90s that he heard on the radio, but unlike like any other hit song from the 90s, which if you type some lyrics into Google, or you're going to find a video on YouTube, you're going to find the lyrics, you're going to find that the song actually existed, like absolutely basically nothing, like no record whatsoever online of this song having existed. And so it, like, the guy kind of becomes obsessed with this, like, how do I remember this song? And like, he remembers it in detail. He remembers the melody, he remembers lyrics, he really remembers it, and yet can't find evidence that the song actually even existed. And so then the host, one of Reply All, kind of launches this whole interesting investigation into trying to find out, like, what is how did this song just disappear? Like, what is this song? And, he talks to like all these music critics and producers and other musicians, and, people float theories. And then so it gets into stuff about like our relationships to music and how our minds work. Some people suggest that, well, maybe his mind kind of like fused parts of different songs into one song that never really actually existed, but he thinks it did. Or, maybe it's an elaborate hoax and this guy made up his own song and is like pulling a fast one on the host of Reply All. And like all these like interesting kind of theories and ideas about what the case could be. And so it just becomes this really fascinating kind of like almost detective story of like trying to figure out what happened. And it has a pretty satisfying payoff in the end, I would say, but it's also like the journey is just fascinating. Like, really fun, engaging podcast episode. Just like, I mean, can you even imagine like remembering a song but like nobody else does, and like how surreal that would be, like the way it would make you feel about your own memory and everything. So anyway, check it out. The Case of the Missing Hit.
I want to know the resolution of this right now, but I also want to listen to the podcast.
Don't skip to the end. If you listen to it, and please, everyone, because the way there gets into, again, as I said, all kinds of fascinating theories and ideas about the music industry, about, again, how our memories work, how our minds process music. And so lots of really interesting stuff woven into this thing that's also just this fun kind of, like I said, fun kind of investigative adventure.
Ebony's the kind of person that's going to Wikipedia that shit. She loves spoilers.
Oh, I love spoilers. I love spoilers. I literally want to be typing this in right now, but I'm not going to. I'm going to listen to the podcast on my way home from the Stewed today.
The Stewed?
Yeah, the Stewed.
I thought you said this dude. I was like, what are you doing after this?
Don't ask me no questions if you don't want the answers.
My freak out is actually thanks to Ebony, because in January, Ebony sent me a link and told me to apply to a thing. And that thing is called the Women's Weekend Film Challenge.
Yeah!
And the idea is that a bunch of professional filmmakers in in film and television and what have you, get together for a weekend and make a film in a weekend. And so I was like, I don't know, Ebony. I don't know if I can do this. It's maybe these women know what they're doing and I don't. But I'd been talking about wanting to get more into traditional filmmaking. So I was like, whatever, fuck it, I'll apply. So the way it works is that they had 400 submissions. Actually, I'll back up just a little bit. They started in New York, and so they've done it for, I believe, 2 years in New York, and then they came to LA this year to do it as well. So they had 400 submissions from women in LA to be a part of this, and they had to distill it down to 200, and they put us in 6 teams, and the teams are entirely women filmmakers from across every aspect of filmmaking. And so we got the genre that is what we're making our film out of, that they give to us at 6 p.m. on Thursday night. And then we have to deliver a film by Sunday at midnight.
So amazing.
And it's wild.
Yeah.
And it was such a lovely experience. Like it's a great opportunity to meet other filmmakers and folks who work in the industry that are women and encouraging more hiring of women. People on my team I already know are working together on projects. Like I already got invited to work on something, but I wasn't in town to be able to do that. Like you build this sort of like solidarity with each other. And it was like, in every set, there will always be problems. Things come up that are unforeseen. And just watching everyone who has literally never met each other, just like flow with it and figure it out and solve the problems and create a thing, right? Create a short film. There's always this question of like, how is it gonna turn out? And I was so happy with ours. It looks really good. I don't think I can't show it yet because I think everyone is now submitting to festivals and that sort of thing. But if it does become available online at some point, I will share it. And I think there's a sizzle reel of all of them, so I will share that as well. But it's something to keep an eye out if you are interested in this kind of thing, or even there's lots of weekend film challenges that happen in general where people come together and make a mini documentary or a short film. And so, keep an eye out for that. I was also really pleased with how racially diverse the groups were in terms of, it started by 2 white women. There's definitely as we have been in the space for a long time, there's definitely the fear that won't be top of mind. And so I did appreciate that. And I did appreciate how varying the skill levels and experience levels were of everyone, right? Like the art director on our project in our team was very experienced. Like she just kind of did this because she's like, it might be cool to like do a project and like help other folks get into the industry and that sort of thing. Like she did not need to be doing this to like ramp up her career or whatever. So that was really cool to have that variety.
Awesome.
Yeah. And we had a screening of all of the films. So we got to all go to the ArcLight in Hollywood and watch everyone's films together in a giant theater. And like, some of the actors on my set had never seen themselves on a big screen before.
Wow.
And, like, it was really cool. It was really, really cool. So, I part of this freak out is also like I did something that was a little bit scary and a little outside of my comfort zone, and I didn't know if I could do it, and I didn't know if like what that would mean. And so like, I just encourage folks to sometimes try and do things a little bit differently, even if it makes you not differently, but try new things, even if it makes you feel a little scared, because that's how you grow. So
that is awesome.
So thanks, Ebony.
Of course. And if anyone needs life advice for
do not take Ebony's advice. She
people,
gives the
Anita
worst
just
advice.
told you that it was, come on. Let me help you live your lives, people.
All right. Well, why don't we quick segue into our guest freak out this week from Ariana.
Hi, everyone. For a while, I've been freaking out about this book series called The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. It's a series of 4 books, starting with The Raven Boys. It covers a group of kids who are searching the tomb of a dead Welsh king to make all their dreams come true, and in the meantime stumble across a few different mysteries that could kind of change everything as they know it. It's a fantasy series, but it covers fantasy in a completely different way than what we are used to. It's a lot of folklore and urban legend and ley lines and kind of the old idea of fairies and fairy tales and dreams rather than elves and dwarves. It has some really strong and independent female characters, which is great, and even a queer couple. So that's The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I always want new book series to read, and my magical words are fantasy, but not. So I'll definitely check that out. You can submit your own freak out at feministfrequency.com/femfreak. Thank you so much for listening to Feminist Frequency Radio. Just a quick announcement is that we are going to take a short break and we will be back with all new episodes starting on April 8th. But in the meantime, you better stay tuned for the Freakin' After Party, which is only available to backers of this podcast. Learn more at patreon.com/femfreak. You can find us everywhere great podcasts are found, and if you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review us. And also, why don't you follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and all the social medias at femfreak. The show is engineered by Rob Para, Carrie Stimpson provides technical support, artwork by Jamie Varon, and our intro music is by Phil Circus. Join us April 8th for another feminist dive into pop culture. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Later.
Bye.